Camille, hello. What a pleasure
Hi.
to be here and talk to you in person. Thank you so much for welcoming me and taking the time for this little interview.
My pleasure.
You recently returned from New York, where you played a well-received and highly acclaimed concert at the Museum of Jewish Heritage. Your concert was the first one in a series of concerts called Modern Jewish Sounds. In addition to your participation as a musician, you also played a major role in the conception of this new concert series. So, could you tell us a bit about how you came to be involved in Modern Jewish Sounds and what is the idea behind it?
So it all started when the team reached out to me. They saw some of my YouTube videos and they wanted to see if I would be interested in performing and also helping them curate the series. What they were looking for is a young Jewish slash Israeli artist who's creating music nowadays and who can also help them bring to the stage some other interesting upcoming artists. So of course I was very happy to participate and to bring to the stage some of my really good friends and also really great musicians in New York, and to also invite some other songwriters that I love and appreciate and think are upcoming to that series. And I think it was a great success. I mean, I had a great time on stage, and the series just ended last week, and I look forward to curating some more music around the world.
In your music, there's a variety of different influences. There's not only the English-American folk tradition, but one can also hear the influence of traditional Jewish music. The two most outstanding examples are certainly your songs Midnight Neret and Ma'asit Korem. When I first listened to these songs, I thought they were traditional Jewish folk songs. So did traditional Jewish music play a role in your family? For example, did or do you still sing traditional Jewish tunes together as a family on the high holidays?
Yes, so I think I'll answer reversed. I'll start with the end of your question. We definitely, as a family, that's one of the main things we do when we gather around the table for holidays or for Shabbat dinners or for birthdays or whatever reason. We always sing and play. We gather around the piano or a guitar.
Macha Shabbat, Shabbat, Menucha.
Or even if there's no instrument at all, we would just sing a cappella. It's definitely a thing that has always been going on in my family. I come from a secular Jewish family, so the way for us to observe holidays is mostly to gather around the table. We normally cook the meal, we sometimes read through the Bible, but mostly we would sing the traditional songs of the holiday or whatever we find is appropriate to the situation.
I learned that your maternal grandmother played an important role in establishing music education in Kibbutz Gazit, where your mother was born, and you spent a lot of time in your childhood. Interestingly, images from Gazit also appear in many of your YouTube videos, for example in your version of Vampire Weekend's This Life or in your cover of Laura Marling's For You. So I guess that spending time with your family in Gazit had some influence on you and your relationship with music. Could you describe this influence? could you describe the special atmosphere you experienced in Gazit as a child, and what is it like for you to visit Gazit today?
Oh wow! So yes, definitely you nailed it. Definitely, the kibbutz Gazit is a very special place for me, and it's definitely been a place where we go to as a family. Like I said before, on holidays we would celebrate with the entire kibbutz together. So imagine in the backyard, between 300 to 500 people sitting together and singing. And for me, coming from the city, each time as a kid, it was also going to nature. It's like when people have out-of-town countryside houses. So for us, it was the kibbutz. It was a little getaway. So as a kid, I would really love going because I get to run in the yards, and they had the pool in summer. So it was that aspect, but also a very strong sense of familyness, being together on the weekends or on holidays. So it's really a special place. I mean, I'm very grateful I had the opportunity. Not everyone has a grandparent in a kibbutz. So as a city girl, I would come in, and I was a city girl coming in and not necessarily was very welcomed by the local kids. There's a bit of a tension between the outside visitors and the locals. Yeah, definitely. They don't accept you as one of, they spend every day, all day together, and then this kid from the outside comes and, sings on the stage in the holiday. Like, who's that kid? But yeah, I really enjoyed going to work with my grandparents. They would take me with them. My grandfather used to work with the chickens with the hens. And my grandmother was a music teacher, and as she grew older, she also took me to work with her. So that was a really great opportunity for me as a city kid, and a great chance to be in nature and to be with my grandparents. And my life was there was always music. Either it was playing in the speakers, or I would go see concerts where my parents would play, or we would sing together as family. So music was always there for me. I was very lucky. So I guess you can say I'm a third generation of a music educator, because my mother does it too, I'm doing it, and my grandmother was doing that too. And a lot of people still remember her until this very day, because she also got to teach the young children in the kibbutz, but also off the kibbutz, I guess. She would work with teenagers in the high schools, like in the local high school. So a lot of kids still remember her as the cool music teacher who was doing fun activities and got their vibe. And so I still have people who come up to me and say, your grandmother, she was an amazing music teacher. I still remember her. Her classes were the best. So I guess it runs in the family.
There's a certain element in your compositions that touches me very deeply. I mean, those passages which Baby described as a kind of lament. Mm-hmm. You are singing melodies without words, just using your voice as a kind of instrument. Interestingly, this kind of instrumental singing not only appears in songs like Midnight Nedet or Ma'asit Kodem, but also in songs like On the Loose or Let It Die, which have a more mainstream feel. Now, I guess that this instrumental singing has a place in Jewish tradition, but I'm not sure. So how would you describe this kind of singing, and could you say something about its musical origin? Are there perhaps some traditional Jewish tunes or musical genres, styles from which you draw your inspiration here?
I guess one of my biggest inspirations of all times is Joni Mitchell, and at least the way I think of her, there are a bunch of moments in her music where there's a lot of voices, a lot of vocals stacked up, and the harmony kind of opens up and you hear a lot of voices. So I guess in those specific places, in those songs, it's a big release of emotion, you can say. It's like sometimes you don't express yourself through words, but through sounds or through looks and expression. So for me, when you hear music, you don't see the person singing, you just hear and feel them. So I guess those moments of instrumental breaks are ways for me to express myself or to express the emotion very strongly. If it's tense, if it's sad, if it's joyful. And there are probably some moments in traditional Jewish music where there's instrumental parts, or again, going back to my family, where we would sing together in harmony. So I guess it all draws to those moments, you can say.
You write your songs in both Hebrew and English, so I would be interested in how you see the relationship between these two languages in terms of your work. Is there a difference in feeling between writing songs in Hebrew and writing songs in English? And if yes, could you describe the difference?
For sure, yeah. There's definitely a difference. I think my writing in Hebrew is more intuitive. It's really intuitive. And because I've been reading a lot of books and poetry and stuff like that, then it's flowing for me. And in English, I do have to take a moment sometimes to stop and think, what am I trying to say? And then asking myself, am I translating it from Hebrew, or is this an English or an American or something that already exists, an expression that already exists? I do feel that in English there are way more words to describe texture and feelings and places. Hebrew is a bit limited in that sense. And also in English, you can be kind of genderless very easily. And in Hebrew, this language is very much attached, embedded to gender. So it's a clearer point of view, or it's a clear voice in Hebrew. So mitnadnedet is very clearly a female singing about swinging on a swing. That's not something that you could express in English. But I love both languages, and I enjoy expressing myself in both languages. But I do think at some point I will probably focus more on Hebrew and try to work more with that field of my brain, I guess, or that side of my brain.
There's one particular thing that I know is of great interest not only to me, but to some other people as well. And that's your hair and clothing style. About 10 years ago, you had very long hair at the time, which you had braided into a braid, and this braid you had wrapped around your hair. And in addition to this hairstyle, you wore high-necked blouses, sometimes combined with cardigans. Mm-hmm. Now, to the unknowing or naive, non-Jewish European eye, your former style looks very fascinating because you seem like a human being completely fallen out of time. Kind of like a character from a science fiction movie whose plot takes place not in the future but in the past. However, when I watched the series Unorthodox and Stiesel, I realized that your early style reminds a little bit of the style of ultra-Orthodox or Haredi women, as they are shown in the series. So I read your early fashion style as an affectionately ironic paraphrase of the dress style of Haredi women. Would you agree with this interpretation, or would you say that I'm completely off the mark here?
Well, I guess back in the day it was also kind of a practical choice for me, because really I had very long hair, and sometimes even when it was with a braid down, it was just getting in the way. So at some point I think I saw that hairstyle and I was like, I can do that, and that will help me, containing my hair a bit. So that was a practical choice, but also an aesthetical choice. I think not so much drawn from Hasidic fashion, but more like you said, science fiction, Princess Leia, or characters from the future or the past. I really like those characters and those stories. So definitely that affected me. And you also mentioned the shirts. So I guess the shirts was like a little wink at the Victorian times, when people would be like more uptight, and the hair and everything. I kind of do like Renaissance paintings and art. So that could be that.
But maybe there's a connection to the ultra-Orthodox people, because they would like to dress like their ancestors dressed.
Yeah, it could also be that I was inspired, but I was unaware just by being surrounded. Sometimes you are just surrounded by things and you don't actively collect these things as ideas, but just by living around them, you kind of absorb them. So I guess you could say I did see Hasidic people around me growing up, not really interacting a lot in my community, but definitely they were there. So yeah, I guess you could say that too.
And what is your relationship to fashion today? What kind of fashion do you like? What do you look for when you buy clothes, and what kind of clothes do you prefer when you go on stage?
So, I guess today I'm just really aware of the climate crisis, and it's been a bunch of years where I mostly shop secondhand or vintage or hand-me-downs from friends and family, and I really enjoy that kind of fashion because it's more sustainable, it's better for our earth, and also I really enjoy that clothing piece that someone does not use anymore can find a new home and a new life with me. And I always get compliments about my outfits, so I guess you can still have a lot of fashion and look good with secondhand and thrifted clothes. So I really recommend that kind of lifestyle and not buying fast fashion.
One thing I really admire about your work is the interplay between two opposing sentiments. On the one hand, there's a deeply felt wistfulness, nostalgia, and melancholy in your work. But on the other hand, you also have a very funny, ironic, and self-deprecating side. Compare, for example, World's End with I'm a Shark. At first sight, these two sentiments seem difficult to combine or reconcile. However, if you look into Jewish tradition, you will quickly see that the interplay between melancholy and irony, sadness and silliness is a characteristic feature of many works of art created by Jewish artists. So I would be very interested to know how you see the relationship between these two sentiments, the melancholy and the silliness for short, in your work, and whether you see here any connection to your Jewish cultural background.
I guess a little bit like we spoke before. Some things you're affected and inspired by without even knowing. So I guess this kind of runs within the Jewish culture. We deal with hardships through humor and through self-irony sometimes. So I can definitely feel that about myself. I sometimes take myself very seriously, but then I make fun of myself to snap out of it and think a little bit outside my head. So I guess you can say it's a Jewish culture element. So, regarding my music, sometimes I have these little bursts of silliness. And at some point in my career, I decided to not separate these things. They all go on my YouTube channel, or sometimes at a show I would play a silly song for the audience as an encore. It's all part of who I am as an artist. So instead of kind of saying, this is my silly hat, this is my serious hat, or this is my adults music or my kids music, it's just like, this is me. This is the kind of scope of what I can do. Sometimes it's taking myself more seriously, sometimes less. Sometimes it's expressing a sad feeling or a strong emotion. And sometimes it's just about being funny and being in the moment and silly. So yeah, it's just accepting who I am as an artist and showing it and sharing it with others.
For example, on the German tour. How do you think the audience reacted to this interplay between melancholy and silliness? I remember a situation in Dortmund, for example, where you said, okay, I just try to sing a song about buying something in the supermarket.
I went to the supermarket today. I got some cheese, it was okay.
I wasn't quite sure if the audience got the point of it, of what was your feeling about doing the slightly silly thing in front of the audience right after a song like Let It Die or so.
Right. For me, a lot of things are obvious because maybe, again, I live or I'm surrounded by Israeli, Jewish young people, so there's a certain atmosphere. And when you go outside, or specifically in Germany, I felt people are a bit more reserved and contained. So there were a few moments on tour where you could feel there was a bit of culture, I don't know if it's a culture clash or just like a bit of people were a bit struck like, oh, what's going on right now? But also, I can also assure you that with my Israeli friends, there are also, or my family even, there are also moments where they go like, Camille is being weird again, like we don't get her. So it's probably somewhere in between me being a very extreme and open and silly person and different cultures. So between these two, it's probably somewhere.
You have this kind of special silliness, I think, which is more grounded in some kind of melancholic worldview.
Yeah.
This is some type of artistic atmosphere that you can often find in Jewish comedians like Sarah Silverman or in many.
I mean, we have two options. We can either laugh about what happened in the history, or we can cry. So I think many times people just decide to make fun of it and loosen up instead of like sitting and being very sorry for the past or something bad happened to me. I can sit at home and cry the entire day and be like, oh, this awful thing happened to me, or I can make fun about myself and the situation and continue more easily with my life. So sometimes that works.